Okay, so we are going to go through the 2019 application of maths paper here. So there is, if you've just come across this, I do have a playlist that's got the 2018 one as well. And if you're looking for normal National 5 maths, I've got that. I also have higher maths too. So just have a look on my, if you're looking for something else other than this, otherwise stay tuned. We'll keep going through this and the paper 2 will be there too. Right, so for question 1, we've got Helen makes and sells candles. The candle should be 22.5 centimetres tall. She rejects any candle that's out with a range of plus or minus 2 millimetres of this height. Below are the heights in centimetres of 10 candles chosen at random. We need to calculate the percentage of candles that she is going to reject. So this is a tolerance question. It always makes sense when we're doing these questions to write down our maximum and our minimum values. So with tolerance, our maximum is going to be the 22.5 plus the 2 millimetres. We need to be careful, I'm just going to rewrite that slightly. So it is in fact 22.5 centimetres plus 2 millimetres. So we need to know how many centimetres are in a millimetre. So when we're in centimetres, we have 10 millimetres in a centimetre, so each millimetre is 0.1. So therefore, when we do that, we get 22.7 centimetres. Our minimum value is our 22.5 centimetres. Take away those 2 millimetres. So we end up with 22.3 centimetres. So we can now start to rule out or rule in candles that would be okay. So if they're out with the range, that means that 22.7 and 22.3 are okay. So if we look at 22.2, that's too little, so it would get rejected. 22.6 is in between, so it's okay. 22.5 is okay because it's in between. 22.9 is too large, it's out with our range. 22.3 is the same as our minimum, so it's okay. 21.6, much too small. 22.6, fine, it's in between. 22.4, it's fine, it's in between. 22.7 is on our limit, so it's okay. And then 22.8, too much. So there are 4 out of the 10 that have been rejected. So our rejected pile is 4 out of 10, which is 40%. So remembering that each tenth is 10%, so 4 tenths is 40%. So where do the marks come for this? The first mark is for calculating your limits, which is why it's always a good idea to write them down. They can be implied by the what ones you've scored out, which is where your second mark is, and then your third mark in that question is for the 40%. Right, that's everything for question 1, so let's keep going on to question 2. So here we are with question 2. We have Paul usually works 30 hours each week. He is paid time and a half for any additional hours that he works. His basic rate of pay is £12.50, and last week he worked a total of 37 hours, so we need to work out his gross pay. So options of what we've got. So the information that we need is the fact that it's usually 30 hours, but we've actually got 37. It is time and a half for any additional hours, and the basic rate of pay is £12.50. So we can work out the basic pay. So we have to not be using the highlighter pen. We need to be using the normal one. There we go. So the 30 times £12.50 is one of the things we're going to have to do. And then we've got our extra 7 hours, which are at time and a half. So we need to work out what the time and a half pay would be. So if we half 12 and £12.50, so £12.50 divided by 2. So we get 12 divided by 2 is 6. 5 divided by 2 is 2, remainder 1. 10 is 5. So it's going to be 7 times, and we're going to have to add together the £12.50 and the £6.25, which gives us £18.75. So the pay is 30 hours where the guy's getting paid £12.50, and then an extra 7 on top of that where he's getting paid £18.75. Right? So let's do, this is all non-calculator. So our 1875 times by 7 shouldn't be too bad. So 5 times 7 is 35. 7 times 7 is 49. Add the 3, gives me 52. 8 times 7, so 7 times 8 if you want to think about it that way, so 48, 56. Add the 5, 61. 1 times 7 is 7, add the 6, gives us 13. So we get £131.25 for this part. We need to work out what 30 times £12.50 is. So first of all, you times it by 10, and then you times it by 3, or you can do it the other way around. So £12.50 times by 10 gives us 125, and then I do 125 times 3. So 5 times 3 is 15. 2 times 3 is 6, add the 1, gives me 7. 1 times 3 is 3. So that means that this part is worth £375. Apologies for my Apple Pencil today, I don't know what's going on, it keeps skipping bits. So we need to add those two together. We can just do that in a chimney sum, or we could do it in our heads if we were able to. Either's okay, right? So 375 and £131.25. We shouldn't be, when we're doing this, we shouldn't really be bothered about having to do tons of like chimney sums and stuff over the side. That's just your working. It's non-calculator, that doesn't mean you have to do it in your head. So 0 add 5 is 5, 0 add 2 is 2, 5 add 1 is 6, 7 add 3 is 10, so 0 carry the 1, 3 and 1 is 5. So we get the total pay is £506.25. So where do the marks come from this question? So there's 3 marks here. So the first one is for correctly multiplying 125 by 30 to get your 375. So either where I ticked it there, or we could say the 375 there gets us our mark. The second one is for knowing that you have to times the £12.50 by 1.5 and then times it by 7. So this kind of bit in here. And then final mark is for calculating it correctly and getting the £506.25. Right, so for question 2 continued, we have Paul is buying a new TV. The advertised price is £825. Decides to use a payment plan to buy the TV. The total cost with the payment plan is £845.80. And the payments are calculated as follows. So the deposit, which is 1/5 of the advertised price. We have 8 equal monthly instalments. And we have our final payment of £100. So kind of thinking about this £845.80 is our deposit plus our total instalments. That's not how you spell installments. Here we go, fix that one. Brain getting ahead of myself. Installments, and also then our final payment. So altogether, those 3 things should be what comes to our £845.80. So we need to work out what our total instalments is, and then we need to work out what each one will be. So first of all, we need to work out, before we can do that, we know what the final payment is, but we need to work out our deposit. So the deposit is 1/5 of our advertised price. You need to be careful here. It's not of the total cost using the payment plan, it's the advertised price. So our deposit is 1/5 of £825. To find a fifth of something, we're dividing by 5. Remember, we don't need to do this in our heads. Non-calculator is not the same as like mental arithmetic. They're not the same thing. Mental arithmetic, you do it in your head. Non-calculator, you write it down. So we have 8 divided by 5, which gives us 1 with 3 left over. Which means we have 32 divided by 5, which is 6 with 2 left over. And then 25 divided by 5, which is 5. So the deposit is £165. Our final payment we know is £100. So our total instalments is going to be what's left when we take those away. So we've got our £845.80. Take away £100 for the final payment, and also taking away that other £165. If you can do this in your head, great. If not, chimney sum all the way. So we've got £845.80, and we're taking away our what comes to £265 altogether. So 0 take away 0, 0, 8 take away nothing, 8, 5 take away 5, nothing, 4 take away 6, negative 2. So in this case we don't want a negative 2, but we could have negatives, but we're just not with this. So we need to break the 800 down, and it becomes 710 tens. So we make the 8 a 7, bring a 1 over. So then we can do 14 take away 6, which is 8. And then we can do 7 take away 2, which is 5. So we get £580.80 for all our instalments together. So our monthly instalment is going to be £580.80 divided by 8, because we're paying it for 8 months. So again, chimney sum, well, division, same thing, not doing it in our head, we write it down. So 5 into 8, can't make any 8s, but we have 5 left over. 58, closest one is going to be 56, which is 7 with 2 left over. Then with 20, it's going to be 16, so that's 2 with 4 left over. And then 48 into 8 is 6, and then 0. So our monthly payment is going to be £72.60. Marks here for this question. First one for doing the 1/5 of 825. Second one for finding the total of all the instalments together. And then the final one is for dividing by 8 to get your £72.60. Right, so we've got question 3 now. We have a pie chart showing the number of hours of overtime that 72 employees of a supermarket worked during 1 month. We need to calculate how many employees worked 15 plus hours overtime. So in our pie chart, we have this section 0 to 4 hours overtime, which is 180 degrees. We've got our 5 to 9 hours, which has got an angle which we don't know what it is. We've got 10 to 14, which is that in there, which is our right angle, and right angles are 90. And then in here we've got our 30 degrees for 15 plus hours. So for part 1, we need to work out what percentage of, or what fraction of people our 30 represents, and find the number that equates to it. So 15 plus hours is 30 degrees of our triangle, so it's 30 out of 360, which is the same as 3 out of 36, because I can just get rid of the zeros on there. And then I can divide them both by 3, because they're both in the 3 times table. So we can see that 1/12 of the people are working 15 plus hours overtime. And so 1/12 of 72. So where's 72 in my 12 times table? And it is the 6th. So it's 6 people for part A. Right, so for part 2, we have to work out the probability that an employee chosen at random worked 9 hours or less of overtime. So 9 hours or less is this column here, or this section of our pie chart, and this part of our pie chart here. So we need to work out, first of all, kind of what angle is in here. So we know that half of our circle is going to add up to 180. So we've got 90 here, we've got 30, so altogether that gives us 120 degrees. So that means that this bit in here is going to have to be 60 degrees. So our probability, our whole circle, so probabilities of less than 9 hours, or less than or equal to 9 hours even, is going to be equal to those two added together, so our 180 plus our 60 over our 360. So everything, remember when we're doing probability, it's what we've been asked about over the total. So the total is 360 because it's still a circle. So then we end up with, on the top, add them together, we get 240. On the bottom, we get 360. Simplifying again, so just get rid of the zeros first, we can get 24 over 36. And that then simplifies down to 1, not 1 over 3, but in fact, you can divide them both by 12, and we get 2 over 3 as our probability. So for this one, marks come first question is just for 6. You either need to have your evidence for part B, first mark is either for 240, or if you worked it out for people, you could get your mark for saying or, because there's other option which you could have is 48 over 72. So you could also get your mark for the 72, the 48 when you put the 72 on the bottom, and then final mark is for expressing it as a probability. And any equivalent fraction was allowed. So you didn't actually, in this case, have to simplify, but it's always best to simplify as much as we can. Right, here we are with question 4. So we've got a thermometer here. We have that Gillian thinks that 24 degrees Fahrenheit is colder than minus 3 degrees Celsius. Determine if she is correct and justify your answer. So over here, we've got our thermometer. This side is our degrees Celsius. This side is our degrees Fahrenheit. So when we're looking at our degrees Celsius, so if I start at 0, just as a nice place to start, we can see we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 in like markings to go up 10, so that's nice and easy. 1 represents 1. So we can mark minus 3 on quite nice and easily. So if we're at 0, we go minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. So we can write in there, this here is our minus 3 degrees Celsius. Now, our 24 degrees Fahrenheit, let's check our scale. So again, if we start at 0, it's an easier place as any. So I can say I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get up 10. So that means each jump has to be not 1 this time, but 2. Because then we're going 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And we get to where we want, when we want. So if we look at this, 20, 22, 24, so we can mark our 24 on as here. So minus 24, it's not minus 24, it's positive 24 degrees Fahrenheit. So we can see there that our 24 is in fact lower. So we are correct. So we can write a kind of sentence. So it's determine if she's correct and justify your answer. So yes, she is correct. As 24 degrees Fahrenheit is below 3 degrees, minus 3 degrees Celsius on the thermometer. Right, where do your marks come for this question? One for marking things correctly on your scale, and your second one for your sentence comparing the two. Right, question 5. So we have Alana takes out a loan of £4,500. The interest plus the administration fee is 7.5% of the loan amount. The total amount will be paid back in 9 equal monthly payments. We need to calculate what that monthly payment will be. So first of all, we need to work out what our 7.5% is going to be. So we need to, 7.5%, not too nice to get to, but there's a few different ways we can get there. So 7.5 is the same as 5 and 2.5, right? So 7.5% is the same as 5% plus 2.5%, yeah? And so those are not too hard to find, so 10% is easy enough. We just take a 0 off or divide by 10 to get it, so we can see quite easily 10% is 450, 5% is half, so I divide by 2 to get 5%. 450, half of that is going to be £225. So I'm halving both of them. And then I can keep going in half again to get my 2.5%. This time it's not so nice, so I'm going to do it actually over here. So divide by 2, so 2 into 2 is 1, 2 into 2 is 1, 5 into 2 is 2, remainder 1. So in this case, if we've got remainders, once our number stops, we put zeros on the end, and then we can carry a remainder over. So then 10 into 2 is 5, and 0 into 2 is 0, so we get £112.50. So our 7.5% is going to be £225 plus our £112.50. So again, add those together, might as well do a chimney sum. 225 plus £112.50. Put zeros on the end of there to add them up. 0 add 0 is 0. 0 add 5 is 5. 5 add 2 is 7. 2 add 1 is 3. 2 add 1 is 3. So our 7.5% is £337.50. So our total is going to be our 4,500 plus our £337.50. So altogether we get £4,837.50 even. So that's our total. So our monthly payments, so we're dividing by 9 this time. So we've got £4,837.50, and we need to divide it by 9 because it's 9 equal monthly payments. So then 4 into 9, none with 4 left over. 48 into 9 is going to be 5 because it's 45 with 3 left over. 33 would be 27, so that's 3. 27 with 6 left over. 67, closest one 63, so that's 7 with 4 left over. And then 45 is 5, and then 0 is nothing. So monthly, making sure it always makes sense to write down kind of what we're doing. So we did our £4,837.50 divided by 9, which gives us our £537.50 payments. So marks here, so it's out of 3, quite a lot of working in here. That's alright. So our first mark is for knowing that you need to find a percentage, add it on, and then divide by 9. So it's quite a kind of loose mark of kind of what you're doing. So if you find a percentage, add it on, divide, you kind of get that first mark. So it's kind of somewhere around there-ish for mark number 1. Our second mark is for correctly finding our interest at £337.50. And then our final mark is for our answer of when we divide by the 9. Right, okay, so for this question, we have to write these in order from greatest to least. So we have 0.388, 3/8, 38.38%, and 0.39. So to be able to compare these, we need to have them all as decimals or all as percentages, doesn't really matter. Easiest way to do it is probably to do it all into decimals. So that's because two of them already are. So we've got 0.388, which is already a decimal. We've got 0.39, which is already a decimal. And we have 38.38%. To change a percent into a decimal, we divide by 100, so that one is the same as 0.3838. So those are equivalent. We then need to find out what 3/8 is as a decimal. So we either need to know what 1/8 is and go from there, or we can just do 3 divided by 8, because that's all fractions are, they're just division, and then that will give us our decimal. So if I do 3 divided by 8, in this case we're not going to get anything overly nice, so I'm going to put some zeros on the end. Right, so let's see. So I do 3 into 8 and I get nothing. No 8s can be made from 3, but I have 3 left over. So now it's a case of 30, how many 8s can I make? So 8 times table, 8, 16, 24. So it's going to be 3. And then I had 6 left over because I got to 24. And now 60 for the 8 times table, so the closest one for there. So if we do, so 5, lots of 8 is 40. And then it's 48, so it's 56, so it's 7. And I have 4 left over. And then 40 into 8 is 5, so I get 0.375. So now I can write them in order because they're all decimals. So we should still write them as our, as they've been given in the question, but to start out with, we can do it this way. So greatest to least. So looking at those, our biggest one is going to be our 0.39. So we have 0.39. And then next one is going to be 0.388. Next one down from there, 0.3838. And then lastly, our 0.375. And then we can write that as they were given in the question. So we've got our 0.39, which is fine as it is. Our 0.388, which is fine as it is. This one, which is 38.38%. And then our last one, which was 3/8. So your marks here are for one, your first mark is for getting the 3 decimals in the right order. And then the second mark is for correctly converting and putting the 3/8 in the right place on the end. Question 7, here we go. So we have an airline records a number of passengers who fail to turn up for their flights each month. The numbers for 2017 are as follows. And I'm not going to read them out right now. For the data, we need to calculate the median, lower quartile, and upper quartile. And then once we've done that, we have to make a box plot. But before we can do that, we need to do our 5-figure summary. So it doesn't do any harm to do our extra data too. Right, so before we can work out our median, lower quartile, and upper quartile, we need to put our numbers in order. We need to double check, so how many we have is our first step. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's always a good check at the end. Make sure you've still got 12 when you do your list. So looking down my list, we're looking for the smallest one because that's where we're going to start. So we have 14 first. So once we've done it, we can score it out. Next smallest going down my list, so 25, 14, I get my 17. So that goes in next. Keeping going, next smallest numbers, there's 20 and there's 2 of them, so we get 20 and we get 20. Next, 23. Then we get 25. Then I have 27. And then we've got no more numbers in our 20s. Oh wait, no we do. We've got one more, which is 29. Then I've got not too many numbers left, so we're looking into 30. So we have 32. I've got 38. And then I've got 43. And I've got 49. Double check. Count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're good. So the median is in the middle. So if we have 12 numbers, if we count in from both sides, we're going to end up with the middle being in between our 6th and our 7th number in here. So this is where our median is in there. And then our quartiles are looking at the halves. So for our lower quartile, we're just looking at the numbers below there. And for upper quartiles, we're just looking at the numbers above there. So below there, we've got 6 numbers. So our quartile is going to be in between, so splitting it into half and half again. So it's going to be in here, which is where we've got our Q1, which is our lower quartile. And then in the top half, 3 and 3, so in here, that's where our Q3 is. So now in between 20, so in between 20 and 20, easy enough, it's 20. The median though, so looking at the next one, so we're in between 25 and 27, we're looking for what's smack bang in the middle between those two, which is in this case 26, easy enough. And then our last one in between 32 and 38, not quite so easy, so if we count up, or we can do like a little number line underneath if we want. So we have 32, then we'd have 33, then 34, then 35, 36, 37, and 38. So kind of counting back, so I go back 1, back and forward, same again. So if we go the same distance to the middle, we get our 35 in there. So marks here, we get 1 for your median being correct, and then you get 1 for both of these being correct. So there's only 2 marks there, 1 for the median, 1 for both quartiles together. So our box plot, we need to construct that as part of it. The other things we need for our box plot are these 2 here, so that's our lowest number, and this one here, which is our highest number. So when we're making our box plot, our lowest number is 14, so if we make a mark at 14 on our box plot, our highest number is 49, so if we make a thing at 49. We also have our box as well, so we need to use our quartiles, so here, so we've got 20 as well. So might as well make a line at 20, making them nice and solid so that when they get scanned in, the person who's marking them can read it easily. I find this a problem I was marking last year, so just be extra careful. Our median, which is 26, which is here. And then our upper quartile, which is 35 over here. So we've got our 5 lines from our summary. We join the middle 3 up to make a box. You should be using a ruler to do this. I can't really because of the fact I'm doing it on the iPad screen. So we get the box there for the middle 3, and then we extend whiskers out. So box plots are also called box and whiskers because the edges go out to there. So box plot, using those 5 numbers, and we're good. So marks here, 1 mark is for your end points being correct, and then the other point is for your box showing your data, your information from part A. Right, so we need to keep going on to part C, because we don't just get our box plots, we get other information too. So we need to keep in mind that our what numbers our quartiles are as we keep going forward. So part C was finding our interquartile range. So our interquartile range is Q3 take away Q1. So in this case, our Q3 or our upper quartile was 35 and our lower quartile was 20. So we get 15. And that's just the mark there. 1 mark, 15. That's correct. So for part D, we need to make one valid comparison comparing the number of passengers who failed to turn up for their flights. So the interquartile ranges is what we have. So we know that in 2017, I think that's the dates that we had on the first one, the interquartile range is 15 and now the interquartile range is 17. So interquartile range is talking about the spread of a data or the variability of it. So we need to make a sentence about it. So we can say in 2017 or in 2016, because we've got the 17, the number of passengers who failed to turn up. So we're still always relating it to the question. Same as when you're answering something in any other subject. Number of passengers. This is also when I'm trying to talk and write at the same time, so something went there. Who failed to turn up. Was, and then based on our interquartile range, so it's 17 and 15. 17 is larger, so that means it would be more varied. And it's a sentence there. You need to relate it to the context of the question and make the correct comment to get your mark. Okay, so for question 8, we have Sarah's driveway is sloped as shown in the diagram below. Cross-section of the driveway is in the shape of a right-angled triangle. So that's an important piece of information that we need. The base is 4 meters long and makes an angle of 12 degrees as shown in the diagram. The other thing though that we can do is add something to our diagram, because it said a right-angled triangle, we know we're going to have a right angle in there. And it's asking us to construct a scale drawing of the cross-section of the driveway using a scale that 1 centimetre is the same as 0.5 metres. So I'm going to go up here to do A. So we know that 1 centimetre is going to be 0.5 metres. We actually have 4 metres, so what have I had to do? So how many 0.5s make 4? And it is 8. So it means our line is going to have to be 8 centimetres tall, or 8 centimetres long. In this case, I'm going to use a ruler to do this, but obviously your one that you're doing yourself would be different slightly than my one, because I'm just doing it on my screen. But I promise I just used a ruler and got 8 centimetres. The other thing we know is that we've got 12 degrees at one end and we've got 90 degrees at the other. So placing your protractor on the far left hand side, you measure up and you make a mark at 12. And then you can make your line at that 12 degrees. So here we go, that's our 12 degrees, our line goes across. And we have a 90 degrees, so we put a ruler down. We make a mark up at the 90. And so we can join up there, so we can make our triangle complete. There we go, I could keep going up if I wanted to, but I don't really need to. And then we should mark on our diagram our 90 and our 12 degrees, and that's our scale drawing. So, for the scale drawing, your marks are 1 mark for having drawn your 8 centimetres correctly, and you need to be within 1 millimetre, correct? And then your angles, the second mark is for both of these, so the 90 and the 12 being correct. So for part B, it says use your scale diagram to calculate the gradient of the driveway. So we know that gradient is equal to vertical over horizontal. Okay, so in that case we need to measure. So we know our horizontal is 8. We don't know what our vertical is, so we need to measure it. So when I measure mine, I'm getting 1.8 centimetres, or 1.7 centimetres. Okay, whatever you got on your diagram, that's okay. So here I get 1.7 over 8. We don't like having decimals in our fractions, however, so we're going to have to get rid of those. So what we can do is we can multiply both numbers by 10, and then we'll get rid of it, in which case we're going to end up with 17 on the top and 80 on the bottom. So marks here, you get 1 mark for your 1.7 or whatever your diagram has, and then finally you get that one there for it being correct. We could just have done millimetres in the first place, so 17 millimetres and 80 millimetres, which is just where the 17 and the 80 come from. So we have question 9. So after a meeting in Beijing, Jennifer flies home to London via Amsterdam. The plane leaves Beijing on the 3rd of February at 12:15 local time. It lands in Amsterdam on the 3rd of February at 8 o'clock local time. And Beijing is 7 hours ahead of Amsterdam, so we need to calculate the time taken for that flight, giving our answers in hours and minutes. So when we're doing this, I like to think about it as kind of like a timeline of what's going on. So we have our start point, which is Beijing, and it is the 3rd of February at 12:15 Beijing time. The other end of my thing is when we arrive, which is Amsterdam, which is also the 3rd of February, and it is 1800 local. So we either need to make our Beijing time into Amsterdam time, or we need to make our Amsterdam time into Beijing time. It doesn't really matter which one we do, but we have that Beijing is 7 hours ahead. So that means when we're doing this, we can find the difference between the two times and then add on our 7 hours, because there's a 7-hour difference. So in between, counting up, so we've got 12:15, so if we go to 1300, so that is 45 minutes. To go from 1300 to 1800, so 13 up to 18 is 5. So our total time is going to be our 45 minutes plus our 5 hours plus our extra 7 hours because of our time difference. So we end up with 12 hours and 45 minutes. And that's the answer for that one. Right, so on landing in Amsterdam, Jennifer's phone tells her the time and date in the following cities. So she landed at 6 o'clock in Amsterdam. It's telling her that it is 5 o'clock in London, and in Miami it is 12 o'clock. She plans to phone her brother as soon as she gets home. She arrives in London at 13:15. Not 13, 23:15, which is 11:15 p.m. Her brother lives in Miami and arrives home from work at 5 o'clock local Miami time. We need to determine whether or not her brother will be home when she gets home from work to make her phone call. And we need to use some working to justify our answers. So the two that are useful for us are these two. So we can see that there is a difference of, so between, using my highlighter again instead of my pen, so in there's a 5-hour difference. So if she gets home at 23:15, so this is the UK time, then the 5-hour difference, we're going back the way because Miami is beforehand. So if we go 5 hours back from there, we end up at 18:15. So we can then make a comment. So we can say, yes, she can, or phone her brother. As it will be 18:15 in Miami. So here, 1 mark for knowing that, or working out the 5 hours difference, and then our second mark is for our sentence. Okay, so with question 10, we have a basic cookie dough mix requires butter, sugar, flour, and chocolate chips. So 1/6 of the mix is butter, 1/3 of the mix is sugar, 1/4 of the mix is chocolate chips, and the rest of the mix is flour. So we need to determine the fraction of the mix that is flour. So first of all, we know that everything together has to add to the whole, and a whole is 1. So we know that 1/6 plus 1/3 plus 1/4 plus something that we need to work out equals 1. So first things we're going to have to do is add together our fractions. So we've got 1/6 plus 1/3 plus 1/4. So to be able to add our fractions, we need to have a common denominator. So we're looking for the first number that is in the 6 times table, the 3 times table, and the 4 times table. So the 3 times table, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, etc. 4 times table, we have 4, 8, 12, 16. Nope, I wrote those. I said them in the correct order, but I wrote them in the wrong order, didn't I? So we've got 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. My 6 times table, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, etc. So we're looking for my first number that appears in all 3 lists, which we can see is 12. So 12 exists in all 3 of those lists. So 12 is the number that we want the bottom of our fractions to have. So we need to change all of these so they've got 12 on the bottom. So looking at each of them, so first one, to go from 6 to here, so to go from 6 to our 12, I need to double it, so times by 2. So whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top, which gives me 2 out of 12. The second one, to go from 3 to 12, I had to times by 4. So I have to times the top by 4, which gives me 4 out of 12. My last one, to go from 4 up to 12, I need to times by 3. So I need to times the top by 3. So we end up with 3. Now, we can add them together. So 2 twelfths, add 4 twelfths, add another 3 twelfths, altogether gives me 9 twelfths. So we now need to know what else, so the flour, or what is left, is what we need to add to our 9 twelfths to get up to 1. Other way of doing that is to do a subtraction. 1 is the same as 12 twelfths, and we're taking away our 9 twelfths, which gives me 3 twelfths. In this case, we could simplify, we don't need to in this one, but that gives us a quarter. Marks for this question. You get 1 mark for knowing to make them all over 12. Your other one for adding them together correctly to get 9 over 12. And then finally, your mark for getting 3 out of 12, which is what was left for the flour. Right, so question 11, we have Mary, who gives some money to 4 of her nieces. It was shared in proportion to their ages. And Kate got £1,950, and we need to calculate the total amount Mary gifted her nieces all together. So this is ratio, because it's proportional, so that's ratio as well. So we can say that we shared in, doing it again, starting in green instead of black, but that's all right. So we have 4 to 11 to 9 to 6. And we know that, so that is Jane, that's Heather, that's Laura, and that's Kate. We know that Kate got £1,950. So we know that 6 shares is equivalent to 1,950. We don't know the other ones. So we know that 6 shares is the equivalent of 1,950. So we need to work out how much she gave them all together. So we can work out our total shares as well. So our total shares is what we get when we add all the numbers together. So that's 4 plus 11 plus 9 plus 6, which is 30. So there's 30 shares altogether. We know what 6 shares are. So there's 2 different ways we can do this. We can either, if you spot straight away that, well, 30 is 5 lots of 6, you can do it that way. Or, more common was to find what 1 share would be. So 1 share is going to be 1,950 divided by 6. So we're still in the non-calculator, so doing it as a calculation on the paper. So 1 into 6 goes none with 1 left over. 19 into 6 is 3 with 1 left over. 15 into 6 is 2 with 3 left over, and then we get our 5. So 1 share is the same as £325. So total is going to be 30 lots of that, so 30 times 325. So that's the same as doing 3,250 even, times by 3. So we times by the 10 first to get 3,250, then we times by 3. So 0 times 3, 0. 5 times 3 is 15, so put the 5, carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, add the 1, which is 7. And then 9 times 3, 3 times 3, which is 9, getting ahead of myself there. So we get the total, which is £9,750. Marks here. First mark was for knowing or working out that 1 share would be £325. Second mark was for knowing that the total shares were 30. And then finally for timesing by 30 to get your 9,750. Okay, so that's it for question 11. Let's keep going. Right, so we have Kieran and Gemma have set themselves a monthly electricity allowance. Kieran has set himself an allowance of £42 and Gemma has set herself an allowance of £49. At the end of July, their smart meters have recorded that Kieran has used £15 of his allowance and Gemma has used £21 of hers. We need to figure out who's used the greater proportion of their allowance. So doing this, we can do this either as kind of decimals or as fractions. Fractions probably make the most sense. So for Kieran, again, doing this like just consistently, forgetting to change the pen to black, I apologise. Right, so Kieran has used £15 out of his £42. So we don't need that pound sign actually, do we? So Kieran has used 15 out of 42. And Gemma has used 21 out of 49. So to compare fractions, we can't compare them if the numbers on the bottom are different. So we need to compare the fractions by simplifying them or by multiplying them up. We can see though that 42 is, so 15 and 42 are both divisible by 3. And then here 21 and 49 are both divisible by 7. So we can see they're divisible by, 7. So we can kind of see what we're doing. And then we can compare and see if we can do things there. So 15 here, so I'm going to divide both by 3. Divide by 3, divide by 3. So 15 divided by 3 gives me 5. 42 divided by 3 gives me, so 30 gives me 10. 12 gives me another 4. So it's 14. If needs be, 42 divided by 3. 4 into 3 is 1, remainder 1. 12 into 3 is 4. Took me a second there, but even though I already knew what the answer was. Right, second one, they're both in the 7 times table, so I can divide by 7. So we get 21 divided by 7, which is 3, and 49 divided by 7, which is 7. Here, we don't have the same numbers on the bottom yet, but I can do something to this one to make the 7 into a 14 as well. So I can now just double that second fraction. So I times both of them by 2. It's going to be 6 over 14. So now I can compare them. So I can make my sentence. So I can say Gemma has used more. As she has used 6/14. And Kieran only used 5/14. Right, so for here, your marks are for the fractions. So both of them to start you out. Your second mark was for being able to compare them properly. You could have used decimals, but non-calculator paper, so the decimals there aren't very nice. And then finally, for correctly saying that Gemma, because the 6/14 is more than 5/14. So we're almost there. This last question coming up. Okay, so we have Joe had a business meeting in London. He travelled from home to his meeting by car. He arrived at his meeting at 11:45. So this is time. So again, I'm just going to write like a little timeline so we know we arrive at 11:45. He travelled 220 miles to his meeting at an average speed of 50 miles per hour. What we need to work out is what the time that was for the 220 miles to take place. So we have speed, distance, time when we're doing this. Distance goes on the top and we have speed and time. So we know that our time is going to be our distance divided by speed. So in this case it's 220 divided by 50. Okay, so here that's the same as doing, we can get rid of our zeros top and bottom, so it's 22 divided by 5. So we're going to end up with decimals here because it's not going to go exactly. So 2 into 5 is none, remainder 2. 22 into 5 is 4, remainder 2. And then 20 into 5 is 4. So it took 4.4 hours. But 4.4 hours didn't really help us enough because 0.4 of an hour is not 40 minutes. That doesn't make any sense. If we think about 0.5, which is half an hour, is 30 minutes. 0.4 can't be 40 minutes. But we need to work out what 0.1 of an hour is. So 0.1 is 1/10. So 0.1 of an hour is 1/10 of an hour. And an hour is 60 minutes. So 1/10 of 60 minutes is 6 minutes. So there we can see our 4.4 is going to be 4 hours and 24 minutes. And then we also know that it stops for another half an hour as well for his breakfast, so plus another 30 minutes. So total time taken is 4 hours and 54 minutes. So we need to work back there. So if I go back 4 hours, I am going to get myself to, so 11, 10, 9, 8, 7:45. And then from there I need to keep going back again, another 54 minutes. In this case, it makes as much sense to go to 7 o'clock first. So I've gone back 45 minutes. So now I can see how much less I've got, how much more I've got to go. So I've had to go a total of 54. So 54 is 45 plus then another 9 minutes further to go. So I get 06:51 as the time that we arrive. As well, just to be clear, write a sentence. So Joe left home at 06:51. Just to make it really clear that that's what we've done. So in here, our marks are, first one is for getting 4.4 hours. Second mark was for seeing that that was 24 minutes and not 40 minutes. Our third mark is for knowing and being able to figure out with the half an hour. So we've got 4 hours and 54. And then our final mark is for getting our answer of 6:51 for the time that they arrived. So that's our last question for the non-calculated paper for 2019. I hope that's been helpful. If it has, please leave a comment. If you've got any questions about any of them, you can just send me a message or a comment on the video. That would be great. Thank you very much. Bye.